Hey everybody, Jim the Tabletop Engineer here. Today I'm going to be painting a mini. I have recently discovered Diehard Miniatures. I think they're out of the UK. Pretty sure they're out of the UK. They make metal miniatures, fantasy, science fiction. I just love their minis. This is not a paid sponsorship or anything like that. I was looking for some metal miniatures for my Stargrave game. Stumbled upon them, ordered a few, loved them so much, ordered some more. This one is called Walter the Warbot, right here. I've already glued him together. He's metal, you can't tell. I've primed him, and I'm going to paint him for this video. So while I'm painting, I'm probably going to just chat about Stargrave a bit because I'm quite taken with the game, and I've got a game tomorrow night, so I've got to get a couple miniatures painted for it. And this is the one I want to do first. So let's get to the tabletop here, and I'm going to start painting. All right, so you may notice I am now using a wet palette. Believe it or not, I have owned this thing for well over a year, and it's just sat there, you know, in plain sight, and I just never actually used it. But probably a month ago, I sat down and started mixing up some paint colors and painted a mini, and I used just a paper plate to mix them. And I got called away, and like 30 minutes later I went back, and the unique color that I had mixed had dried. And that right there, I was just so fed up with it. So I got this out, I wet the sponge, put the piece of they call this parchment paper, or I can't remember what this is. This is a name, baking paper or something like that. I bought it, cut it up, and I used it for another mini, and it worked like a charm. I put this lid down on it, and the next day I came back and the paints were still, you know, wet. So this one is called Masterson's, I don't know if you can read it, Masterson's Stay Wet Handy Palette. I think I got this off of Amazon. I'm not 100% sure. It's been a while since I bought it, but I'm gonna use it today. So here is Walter the Warbot. I'm gonna paint him more metallic, but I also want to have some colors in there. I primed him with a white primer, and I'm going to hit him with some silver on the underbody and the metallic, where I want to hit it with metallics, and then I'll worry about the other colors. I definitely want to use this blue. It's called medium blue from Vallejo, and I just like it. I don't know, it's just very eye-appealing to me. So let's get started. Now, while I paint, this is not a paint tutorial video at all. What this is this is just giving me a chance to get a model painted, but also a chance to just chat about things. I'll be painting sci-fi minis, science fiction, fantasy minis, all kinds of minis. And I figure while I'm painting, I'll just open up some discussions for you guys to think about. And today, when I was pondering on what do I want to talk about today, since I'm doing a sci-fi mini, I thought I would catch you guys up on some of my experiences playing with Stargrave from Joe McCullough, published by Osprey Games. I have now played, I think, 6 games in all, which doesn't sound like a lot. It's not a lot compared to how many games of Frostgrave I've played. But I've played 6 games against opponents, and I've played 2 games solo, using some of the solo rules that Joe provided prior to the game. He made this PDF available called Dead or Alive, or maybe it was called Wanted, I can't remember. And it basically puts you in the position of a bounty hunter. And I played some of those, and they were fun. He's got a new book out called Quarantine 37, which also has some solo games in it as well. And I haven't played those yet. Definitely wanting to try those. But so far, I am loving Stargrave. Oh, by the way, I also taught, well, I guess I've played 7 games against opponents, if you really think about it, because one of them was against a new player where I was basically just sort of teaching them as I went. And then the other one, I didn't really play so much as I was just the judge or the referee, and I had 2 new players, and I was just sort of acting as a guide while they played. But I am really, I don't think there was ever going to be any surprise to me that I would like Stargrave. I have enjoyed Frostgrave so much, it just kind of made sense that a science fiction spin on Frostgrave was going to be cool. Now, I know some people don't like Frostgrave. Some people probably don't like Stargrave, but I just I knew that I loved Frostgrave, and because I'm such a science fiction fan, I was just really looking forward to this game. And so I'm really glad now because it's out in the public. People are playing it. More opponents are becoming available. As a matter of fact, I have a game tomorrow night. I'll give a shout out to a new friend of mine. His name's Grant here in Atlanta. And he arranged a Stargrave, I guess we could call it a tournament, but it was really to invite new players or people interested in seeing the game. And Grant and I sort of ran it, although he really did a lot of the heavy lifting with getting it organized and arranging for the tables, and he even brought most of the terrain. I brought enough for one game. He brought enough, I think, for two. But Grant and I have a game tomorrow night, and I'm going to be using my level 20 captain. And the level 20 captain, now captains start at level 15. I know that sounds, you're like, oh, you've only played 6 games, but he's already level 20. Captains start at level 15 if you've read the rule book. If you haven't, there's a reason for that. And it sort of explains away some of the bonuses you get and some of the advantages for getting better powers and improving the powers before the games ever start. First mates still start at level 0. And my first mate is a level 4, not a level 5. But I've gotten enough XP from the first number of games that I've played to take my captain up to level 5. And I think I've left level 20, excuse me. And I think Grant said his is at level 19. So we should have a fairly balanced game. I certainly don't want to play with a level 20 captain against I guess a level 15 is not that big of a change, but I just don't know. I haven't played enough to know whether or not in Stargrave, what the difference is and what kind of gameplay is available. What'll really be interesting is as more people play, I'm curious about feedback about, what do people think, what do players think for a difference of, say, 10, like a level 15 versus a level 25, a 10 level difference. Is it significant? If it's not, where do you start noticing that the game is not balanced when you have two different players bringing captains that are two different levels? I mean, one of the things about Frostgrave and Stargrave, and a lot of people don't like this about the game, the word swingy is used a lot, and if you're not familiar with that word, what it really, at least to me, what it means is that you've got a game where the dice have a lot of control. You can have a super high level character in a lot of different role-playing games or war games, and a non-swingy game just means that your rolls are the end result of the roll, the final number you get, is just heavily factored more by the character stats than the luck of the die roll. So a swingy game is where you could have a really high-level character who's powerful, and you're up against a low-level character, and the dice that you roll really controls the results. So, and we've all played games, or at least I know I've played plenty of games where I had a low-level soldier against a high-level captain or higher, and I lucked in and rolled a natural 20, and their guy rolled a 2, and that's swingy. I mean, it's just one of the things of the game. It's a luck shot. My captain, my high-level captain got killed, or his high-level captain got killed by one of my low-level grunts, and that's just the way the dice played out. So a lot of people do not like games like that are swingy. I personally think that it adds to the game, both in Stargrave and Frostgrave, because there is a little bit of luck. There is a little bit of that risk involved. Now, you can have a high-level character in Stargrave that is not swingy, and what I mean by that is it's when you start using things like powers, like the captain has powers and the first mate has powers. And as you get higher level, the activation rolls for those come down, and all that means is that you're going to have more likelihood of successfully using a power, because the number you need to roll is low, and you have to always roll higher than the roll. So like if your target number is 8, an 8 to 20 means it's successful. 7 or lower means it's not. And as you level up a character in Stargrave, a first mate or a captain, you can choose to lower those activation numbers for certain powers. So you might have a power that you really enjoy, and every other time or you level up, you just keep lowering its activation number by 1 to get it down to like a 7, or I think the 6 is as low as you can go. It could be 5. I can't remember. But swingy games, some people like them, some people don't. And Stargrave definitely has its moments of swingy, if you want to keep using that word. But what Stargrave really has that I have been absolutely enjoying is a larger variety of actions when it comes to your characters and your opponent's miniatures. So in Frostgrave, you have a wizard and apprentice, and when you create your wizard, you basically pick 8 spells. All right, and the 8 spells are also used by your apprentice. And so in a game, quite frequently, I see this with a lot of players. In Frostgrave, players tend to focus on 1 or 2 spells, and that's what they cast during most of the game. A lot of times it's an offensive, like damaging type spell, or sometimes it's something like heal. You just keep healing your war bands, your soldiers. With Stargrave, you have your captain and your first mate, and Stargrave changes it in a way that your captain and your first mate can have the same powers, but they also have different powers. The powers are selected based on what's called a background. Your soldier types don't have this. Well, they do. They're a soldier type, so you might have a grenadier who fires grenades or whatever. But your captain and your first mate have these things called backgrounds. And the backgrounds, sorry, I'm just looking at this. The backgrounds define the powers that you can select. And I'd be pulling these out of the air. I'm making these up as I go. But like, for instance, a background might be an aristocrat. A nobility, like you choose your captain to be from nobility. Well, one of the powers, and I'm making this up. One of your powers might be that you have some sort of pull before a game. Like you can maybe roll before the game to have a loan, more money, or maybe you have some sort of effect on the game itself that's related to your fact that you're of noble birth. I chose one called Cyborg for my captain. So Cyborg, one of the things I have is like an energy shield. I think it'll take up to 3 points of damage. I can activate it. If I activate it, it'll absorb 3 points of damage. My first mate, I chose him to be a veteran. And a veteran has like a lot of combat experience, powers, and things like that. And Cyborg has, there's things he can do like mechanical. I think he can have some sort of, what is it? I'm going blank here, but I haven't played the game enough to memorize all of the different powers that he has. But anyway, one of the things I really, really like about the Stargrave game is the variability of your captain and your first mate. And then your opponent also has that exact same thing. If your opponent has chosen 2 different backgrounds for his or her captain and first mate, what you're getting in the game is this huge, not huge, but you get this larger variety of powers that are being used on the table. I'll tell you, I played a game in Frostgrave a while back against an opponent. We both chose the same wizard spell of school. We were thaumaturges, and we pretty much, I think, with the exception of 1 or 2 of the 8 spells, we chose pretty much all the same spells. And so our apprentices also had the same spells. So what happened was, during the entire game, we were both casting pretty much the same spells. And there's nothing wrong with that. It's just, it just takes a while longer for you. You have to play a lot of games to see the large variety of possible spells that are available in Frostgrave. So every game you play, if your opponent has chosen a different school of magic, you're gonna get a little glimpse of some of the spells in that school, and it might affect your next game. Like if you create a new wizard, you might say, I really like that spell that guy cast. I'm gonna choose a wizard school that has that, so I can use that as well. With Stargrave, you just get more and faster opportunities to see a larger range of powers going on, and that's a good thing, because in just the handful of games I've played, I think I've seen almost all of the backgrounds. I can't recall which one I haven't seen, but I know there's one or two that I've not yet played against. So that's cool. I have a much quicker. I've had much quicker visibility of the opponent types that one can face in Stargrave at a very early part in the game. When I started playing Frostgrave, there were a lot of what do you call them, expansion books, and there were a lot of new soldier types. So it did take a while for me to see everything. Some soldier types were just never getting picked. They just weren't very useful in a game, and players would figure that out pretty quick, or just by reading it, you'd say, that's not going to be the type of game I want to play. But with Stargrave, what I'm finding is that pretty much all the soldier types have their moment. And let me explain that, because I was talking with some of the guys I played with at the last Stargrave tournament about what I noticed. And in particular, what I did was I chose, okay, I'll give you an example. I had a soldier type called the Grenadier. Now, the Grenadier fires a grenade launcher. And with the grenade launcher, you pick a point within 16 inches, I think it is. Within 16 inches. You pick a point that you want the grenade to land, and then there's a target number. You roll for that number, and if you get over that number, you successfully place the grenade where you wanted to place it. And then any targets that are within 3 inches of that point have to make you get a shooting attack against them, right? So you can a grenade will do damage to multiple opponents that happen to be within range of the point you selected. Now here's the clincher: if you miss, if that targeting roll to hit that point you chose, if you miss it, the grenade goes off target in a random direction, a number of inches equal to the difference of the roll. So if your target number was 12 and you rolled an 8, so it's not successful, you still launched the grenade, but you missed it by 4. So now that grenade is going to land 4 inches from the point you selected, and it's random. You have to roll randomly. It's possible that grenade could come back towards you. If you fire it too close to yourself and you miss, and that roll puts the grenade back to you, you may find yourself within that 3 inches of the grenade. Has it happened? Yes, it has. It happened in my very first game with that Grenadier at the tournament. Luckily, the grenade exploded and it missed my soldier that was within range avoided it. But so I tell you this because a moment ago I told you that there are that just about every soldier type that I've read about, and I haven't played them all, seems to have a strength that is going to benefit at least one particular background, maybe more than one. I chose Cyborg for my captain. And the reason I did that was the Cyborg background has this ability, and I just went blank on the name, but it's, anyway, I forget the name of it. But what it does is the captain may touch, it's a touch ability, one warband member within 1 inch. So basically you have to be right next to the captain. The captain rolls to activate this power. If it's successful, the character he touches may throw a grenade or launch a grenade, and the point they pick is automatically hit. You don't have to roll to see if it lands randomly in some distance. I kept my grenadier very, very close to my captain, waiting for that prime moment when my opponent made the mistake of having too many players or too many of his warband members close to each other. And then when that moment happened, what I did was I saw it coming. I said, okay, on the next turn, he's going to have those guys all bundled within 3 inches of each other, or at least within 3 inches of a point that I was pondering. So on my turn, I group activated. And if you're not familiar with Stargrave, basically in group activation, in Stargrave, every type of warband member you have, including your captain, your first mate, or your soldiers, have a phase that they can move and fire and activate. There's a captain phase, a first mate phase, and then there's a soldier phase. Now, soldiers typically will only move in the soldier phase. However, if they are within 3 inches of a captain or a first mate, you can do what's called a group activation, and you can choose to activate up to 3 soldiers within 3 inches of your captain or first mate, and they can move on that character's turn. So my grenadier, by being very close to my captain, he could activate during the captain phase. So what I did was I declared group activation, and when you do, you move all the characters first, and then you take an action. So what I did was my grenadier was out of range at the moment from those 3 characters that I wanted to target. So I moved the grenadier as close as I could, and he was within range. I moved my captain. I cast that ability on the grenadier, which was successful. The grenadier fired a shot. It was accurate. And then I was able to roll 3 attacks, 3 grenade attacks, because all 3 of those soldiers were within the range of the grenade, the accurately placed grenade. And that's an example of what I'm talking about in terms of pairing your captain or your first mate with one or more soldier types that just seem to have gel or have, some sort of, there's a karma there between them, and they just work out. And that was the one that really worked for me. I got 2 of the 3 soldiers. One of them dodged or was successful in dodging, but the other 2 took hits. I think killed one, and the other one took a lot of damage. And I used that twice in that game because my opponent didn't get wise to it. So a few moments later, there was another chance to do it. And I think at that point it worked again. And at that point, my opponent was like, okay, I've kind of figured this out. Do not group my guys together. But Stargrave it's so new. There's only one expansion book out. So this is a great time for players who are looking for like a science fiction skirmish war game. And if you're not familiar with war game versus skirmish war game, a war game is typically larger in scale. You can have 20 soldiers on the table, miniatures. You could have 50. You could have 100. Games like Warhammer are war games. You can have a lot of miniatures on the table. Whereas a skirmish war game is usually lower in number. Now with Stargrave, it's 10. You have a captain, a first mate, and 8 soldier types. And there are some times when you can have more, like 1 or 2 more figures on the table, but they're special abilities or special situations. Typically, most players are bringing 10 miniatures to the table. So again, it's a very inexpensive game to get into. You only need to bring 10 miniatures, and that is one of the defining elements of a skirmish war game. And there are more. Another one is a lighter rule set. Usually skirmish war games, the rules are not as complicated. Now that's not always true. I have played some war games that are quite complex in their rule set, but typically they're simpler. They're just not as complex. They're also less expensive. Usually the rule book is cheaper. Usually there's only one rule book, one core rule book. And let's see if I can show you. There you go. He's getting there. One rule book, and then you have expansion books. And Stargrave has, as I mentioned, Quarantine 37 is the first expansion book that has come out. It came out, I think, let's see, April was when the first book came out, or maybe it was May. I can't recall. It was about 3 or 4 months before the first expansion book came out. The next one is due out in December. I was just looking at it this morning, its description. It brings vampires and I think werewolves to the forefront as major elements of a campaign. I could be wrong. Maybe it's just vampires. I think they were werewolves though. But anyway, this is just a perfect time to get into Stargrave because you're not way behind the curve. There are so many new players that, and I mean new players that have never played Frostgrave or Stargrave. So you can easily get into the game, find some opponents because it seems to be very popular. It's growing in popularity. There's a good Facebook group that's very active. We have a Facebook group here in Atlanta called Stargrave Captains of Atlanta, and I want to say we're up to about 50 members, maybe less, but I think it's 50. And the nice thing about it is you can get on that Facebook page, and when you want to play a game, you just say, "Hey, I'm open for a game. Anybody available Wednesday night or Thursday or Saturday?" And almost always you're gonna find somebody that can maybe meet you and play a game. And that's how Grant and I scheduled this. Grant, texted me and said, "Hey, let's play Wednesday night." And if I couldn't, I'm sure that Grant would have been able to find somebody to meet him and play a game on Wednesday night. But just a really fun game. So regarding Stargrave, in the first few games I played, I really just didn't know what I was doing. I don't even remember honestly what I played. I know I didn't play a cyborg the first. I played a veteran captain. I remember that now. But now I've gotten quite a few games under my belt. And the last 3 games I played with my cyborg captain. And I changed out the soldiers a little bit. And you can do that. Soldiers die in the game. If they get killed in the game, that doesn't mean they're dead. At the end of the game, all the miniatures that got killed in the game, you roll on a random table, and it tells you whether they're really, truly, permanently dead, or maybe they have an injury that carries over into future games, or maybe they're really, really wounded and they have to take a game break. Soldiers cost money, most of them, but there are some soldiers that are free. And so if you ever get some of your key soldier types killed out, like your armored trooper, for example, who's very expensive, and let's say you don't have enough credits to buy another one, you can play a game and just recruit a free soldier, the most basic soldier, and use that until you get your money back up so you can get another trooper. What was I doing? I was thinking I wanted to do a different color, lighter blue. I am going to go with a lighter blue. Yes, I talk to myself when I paint. I work from home. I work here by myself. It's very quiet right now, except for a dog over there. So occasionally I do talk to myself. I probably shouldn't do that, but excuse me. So anyway, what I've done is now that my captain has gotten a little more powerful and a little bit more money credits under his belt, I'm upping some of my soldier types. I'm getting rid of the cheapy or the low power freebie ones, and I'm buying a few higher powered ones. Now in the game, you don't buy what's called robots. You just buy a type like a grenadier or an armored trooper who always has like armor on. And then before the game starts, you will designate if they are a robot or not. And the reason you do that is in the game, there are certain powers and certain weapons that can affect negatively a robot. And then there's certain powers or certain weapons that a robot is not susceptible to. So it's not like you want to make all your warbands robots or all your soldiers robots because they're tougher and they're not susceptible to so-and-so power. It could very well be you may find yourself up against an opponent who has the ability to mess with robots. And I'm taking a chance. Am I going to have this video up before? Yeah, Grant will probably watch this. Grant may be able to watch this video tonight. I think I'm going to post it tonight. I'm taking a chance here because one or more of my warband members may be robots. Hint, hint, this one. I haven't decided what this guy's going to be. This may be, he may be an armored trooper, and then I may designate that he is a robot. There's a lot of flexibility that you have as a player with how you want to define the soldiers or the warband members in your game. I like this Walter, the warbot from Diehard Miniatures. I just like the look of him. So I'm going to incorporate him into my warband. And that's the other cool thing about Stargrave. Now, with some skirmish games, there not many, but there are some skirmish war games that the miniature types are defined. Either there are official minis, or the miniatures have to be created in such a way that they reflect what the soldier's bringing into the battle, like maybe the weapon that it's carrying. So like this guy has no weapons in his hands. He's just got big fists. But I can still specify on his sheet that he has, a weapon, a pistol or something like that. And it doesn't have to be reflected in the miniature. The game is miniature agnostic, meaning you can bring in a bunch of caveman minis if you really wanted to, and put them on the table, and you could say, well, this guy is my captain and this guy is so-and-so. It doesn't matter. People play these games with Lego miniatures, Lego minifigs. So you're not limited to any particular miniature. I mean, obviously you probably want to try and stick to the sci-fi theme just for immersion, the immersion of it. But there are no rules that say all your characters must look sci-fi-ish. All your figures must have sci-fi weapons in their hands and things like that. And what that does is it really allows a player to customize their army, their war band, the way they like it. I've seen Buck Rogers style war bands where all the miniatures look very 1950s retro sci-fi look, like Flash Gordon and Buck Rogers, and if you know who those guys are. I've seen sci-fi miniatures that have a fantasy element to them, like they're like wizard type figures, but they have guns and stuff, and you can do whatever you want. I am a sort of a purist. I like my sci-fi miniatures to look sci-fi. I want the robots to look like robots. But I don't really care if the miniatures all come from the same line or the same manufacturer. As a matter of fact, out of my 10 miniatures, I think 6 of them, maybe 7, are Diehard Miniatures of this company. And then the others, I think the others are the official Stargrave miniatures. Because when Stargrave was released, there were some official miniatures that were done by North Star. I always mess up your name, and I apologize. North Star Military Miniatures, something like that. I'll put a link in the description below as an apology to Nick for messing up the name. I just call it North Star, so I always forget the other part of it. But they do sell miniatures for Stargrave that are like official. They have the Stargrave name on them. And they're quite good, and they're plastic, and you glue them together. And after you glue them together, you can mix the heads and the arms, and you can change weapons and poses and stuff. They're very, very customizable. The reason I'm sort of liking these Diehard miniatures is I'm going to go out and say it right now. I really like metal miniatures. The heaviness of them. I like just the heft. I also like painting them. I don't think there's any difference really between painting a primed plastic mini and a primed metal mini. I don't think there is, but part of me thinks that there's something different about painting a metal mini, and it could be that it's heavier. I like the bulk of it. The other thing is these Diehard miniatures, they're all on 1-inch bases. I put them on 1-inch bases. They are slightly taller than the official Stargrave miniatures. The Stargrave miniatures, I think, are called 28 millimeter. I could be wrong. Maybe they're 25, but I think they're 28 millimeter. And if I don't know this for a fact, but these Diehard ones, I think, are 32 millimeter. So they're just a hair taller. And again, I could be wrong. I'm doing this from memory, but I'm pretty sure. I know they're bigger because I've got some of the Diehard miniatures next to the official ones, and they're definitely just a little bit taller. But you know what? If that bothers you, then don't, stick with one scale. I tend to go with what I like to paint and look at. And these Diehard miniatures, once I found them, I've placed 3 orders from them. I wish I'd have known. I would have saved postage and just ordered them all at once. I've ordered a total of, let's see, the first one I ordered 2, second one was 4, and this one was 5. So 9, 11. I have ordered 11 sci-fi miniatures from Diehard at different times, probably about 3 weeks to a month apart. I may go back and get some more. I haven't decided yet. I may be done. Probably not. I'll probably go get some more. But I will tell you this: if you're watching this video and you like this one, go check out Diehard Miniatures, oneword.com, and check out their sci-fi. They also have fantasy and other ones that you may want to look at. But I will tell you this: there were a couple miniatures that I wanted during that first order that were out of stock. So if you see one that you really like, you better add it to that cart before it disappears. They do seem to recast their miniatures fairly regularly, because it wasn't too long after I saw that it was the one I wanted was sold out that it came back. And so I ordered it again, and it was after a few games of Stargrave that I realized I wanted some robots. So this last order of mine, actually that's not true. I wanted more robots and more aliens. I would say well over half, probably 6 of my 8 warband members are not human. They are aliens. I have a snake one, which looks just so awesome. He's got a laser rifle. I've got this like reptilian looking one. You know what I'll do? I'll take a picture of the ones I've got painted up, and I'll append it to the end of this video before I put it up for you. But again, just really, really taken with these miniatures. What I'm going to do now is, the paint is still drying. I'm going to paint the base black. I usually put some elements like rocks or high-tech looking mesh or something on the base. I haven't done that yet. What I'm going to do is paint the base black. I am going to use some washes over the light blue and the dark blue to get down into the crevices to pull out that detail. And then I'm going to go back over it with the colors again and do some dry brushing just to fill in some of the places I missed. Yeah, sorry. All right, so where was I? I was talking about Stargrave. The game itself is pretty easy to learn, as I've said. It's a skirmish war game, so the rule set is not complicated. Now, what I would tell you is, if you have a chance to learn while you play, I highly recommend that. I think finding someone who will maybe either walk you through creating a warband, or do it for you and then just bring some miniatures and then just have you play a game. The first game you play, you don't really probably know enough about the game to make a long-term commitment to a particular captain or first mate. So if you have the opportunity to play with a friend, just ask the friend, say, hey, make me a captain and a first mate. Or if you have the time, sit down with them and have them walk you through it. But your first game, you're really not going to know enough about the game to understand all the... For one thing, a lot of people that play war games, they'll have a style of play. Some players are very aggressive. They want combat. They want to get in there and they want to duke it out before they... Now, let me take a step back. One of the goals in Stargrave, how do you know who won? All right, let's say that. In some games, it's just wipe out your enemy. wipe out as many of their warband members, and whoever is left standing, that's your winner. But in Frostgrave, in Stargrave and Frostgrave, most players tend to play long term. They do what's called a campaign. And a campaign can be some pre-created scenarios, and there are some in the Stargrave book, or they can just be standard games where you go up against opponents. And what you're trying to do in the game is collect loot. And loot is represented by tokens in the game. There are two types of loot. There is data loot and there is physical loot. Data loot is you can represent it on the table using any kind of token. Some people use like a little computer terminal. So when a character or a warband member, a miniature, goes up and touches or comes in base contact, base to base, with that loot token, they make what's called they're going to try to hack it, to open it. And you think of it as cracking a computer or hacking a computer. And you make a will roll, which is a stat that all characters have. And if you go above the roll, it's successful. You successfully open up the data loot. Data loot is worth money. At the end of the game, you take all the data loot tokens that you've collected, you go to this particular page, and you roll to see what that data loot represents. Does it represent information that can be sold? Does it represent secrets? It usually has a credit amount that you can immediately take and add to your bank account. And remember, your bank account, you want to keep it growing because that's how you fund new recruits when they die, old ones die, and you have to replace them. It's also how you upgrade your recruits. You get tired of playing, the most basic soldier types. The more advanced soldier types cost more money. They can cost 100 credits, 150. I think there's one or two that may cost more than that. The idea is that, the data loot will help fund your next game. You can use those credits to buy things like equipment and weapons. Now, you can't buy everything in the game unless you agree with your opponents or your campaign, the players in your campaign. Most things you have to find in game. And I'm talking about the special items. And that's where the physical loot comes in. You do the same thing. When you're coming base-to-base contact with a physical loot token, you have to hack or break open the container or box that it's in. And what you find at the end of the game, for every physical loot token you have, you roll on a different chart, and it tells you whether you find a weapon or armor or money or maybe some special weaponry or equipment that can be used over and over, or sometimes it's one shot. Those things you typically keep, and you use them in the next game or in future games. Or the rules allow you to sell those items that you find and recover, and usually it's for half price. So if a special weapon costs 500, you can sell it for 250 and put that in your bank account. So I'm telling you this because with the data loot tokens, that's how you win a game. You want to try and get the loot tokens. But to go back to my previous conversation, some players are very aggressive. They want to get in, defeat all their opponent's soldiers, and then there's a rule that basically says, hey, if you've cleaned the table of all your enemies, you can collect all the treasures, or the loot, I call them treasures, all the loot tokens, because, for all practical purposes, at that point, you have an unlimited number of attempts that you could just sit there and keep trying to open. So you get them. So a lot of players will come out swinging. Some play types, I was mentioning that everybody has a style that they play to. Some players prefer a speedy in, speedy out. So they'll invest in soldier types that are fast, that can move faster than the typical soldier. Or maybe they're more heavily armored so that they can run in and take a bunch of hits, but then they can escape before they die. And depending on your play style, there are soldier types that will lean towards that style of play. I change my style of play. I'm not consistent, and that's probably why I also am not consistent in my strategies. And because I'm not consistent in my strategies, my success fail rate in a campaign is always up and down, up and down. I'll win a few, lose a few, win a few, lose a few. I do know players who pick a strategy and they stick with it And typically what I've found with them is that early on in the games, in the campaign, they'll lose more, but then they start ramping up their strategies, their powers start dropping in activation values, and that their overall strategy becomes more successful and more solid, and they tend to start winning more games towards the end of the campaign. So again, this is probably deeper than I probably should have gone in this video, but I just wanted to let you know that that's one of the things you want to consider when you are playing a game like Stargrave, is that you may not have a strategy when you first start playing because you don't have enough knowledge of the game to, sorry, I'm looking for blue tone here, blue wash. You don't have enough knowledge of the game, the rules, the powers, the warband members, the soldier types, the backgrounds, to make a smart, no, that's not the right word, not a smart decision, to make a decision that is going to impact your gameplay. It may take a handful of games, more than one, for you to start figuring out what your real strategy is in a skirmish war game. And it'll change from game to game. I can tell you right now, I've played enough Frostgrave games that even though I try not to stick to a strategy, you almost have to if you want to continue to win, or at least keep your wizard alive long term. You have to have some sort of goal in mind of how you're going to play your wizard and your soldiers, so that you can continue to win. I have not yet reached that point in Stargrave where I know, for example, when I'm playing an opponent who is playing a veteran or an aristocrat or whatever the backgrounds are, I haven't played enough games to be able yet to develop counter strategies for those characters. I'm getting there. I'm really looking forward to tomorrow night's game with Grant, mainly because I think he's played as many or more games than I have. And I don't mind playing somebody who's more experienced or has a higher, level captain or what have you. The game, again, is swingy, and you just never know when you go up against... you can go up... I have seen veterans of Frostgrave lose very, very quickly to newbies or new players. I have seen in games where the pros have lost to novices in Frostgrave, and I won't say Stargrave because I haven't watched enough games yet, but it can happen. So I tell you this only because if you've just started playing Stargrave and you're getting frustrated because you're not winning, maybe just hang in there. Every player has that moment. They're going to have that game where things start to click, and they're also going to have games where they lose terribly, and they're going to have games where the victory is just so incredible with some of the rolls you'll make. My most memorable Frostgrave game happened a couple months back. I got wiped out. All 10 members knocked off the table. Now, they weren't killed outright. I think I did lose one permanently to an after-game roll, but everyone else recovered. But my opponent, I was rolling so bad that day. I mean, I was rolling ones and twos and fails, and it was just ping, 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 ping. It was a very fast game. I went in, and I was very aggressive that game. I rushed in, divided up my warband way too much, had everybody in different places, and ended up losing horribly. It was funny. I didn't get mad or anything. I mean, I congratulated my opponent because it was disgusting. It was just a horrible loss, but it was a great win for him. And that's how games are. I know there are players out there that love to win. Win. Fortunately, most of the games I've played, the players tend to be pretty cool. They're like, win, you lost. It happens. You play enough games, you're going to have those moments where, unfortunately, it just doesn't go your way. And I will let you know how my game with Grant goes tomorrow. It could go either way. I don't know. I'm playing with some new soldier types that I have not played with before. And the reason I'm doing that, and I'm probably not giving anything away here to Grant, but the reason I'm doing that is I haven't played enough, and I want to try before I get really into Stargrave, because it is picking up in popularity, especially here in Atlanta. Before I get too far into Stargrave, I want to try all the backgrounds. I want to try all the soldier types, or at least go up against them. There are some that just don't appeal to me, and I don't know why that is. Like one of the backgrounds I think is called mentalist or psychic or something like that. I just know that it just doesn't appeal to me. I've never, even in fantasy games, I've never cared about what they call psionics or psychic, magic or whatever. And in the sci-fi game, I think it's cool when someone else plays it because I just don't, it just doesn't do it for me. And so I was playing against a player in the last game. It was, who was that player? It was Charlie or Charles. And Charles, if you're watching this, you were the first player I taught to play the game. I think he was playing either a mentalist or psychic or something along those lines. And he had some really cool powers. And I mean, he was doing some wild, he had this thing called Psychic Blast. And it was, in the game, you can have what's called a flamethrower. And it looks like a cone and it goes out like an ice cream cone with a circle on top, and anything that falls within that area is within the flame area. Well, this special ability that he had, and again, I apologize, I can't remember the name of it, but it was a mental attack, and what it did was you placed 2 of those side by side in a direction, and anyone that falls within them can take damage. And man, I mean, he just got into position where he was able to do 4 of my guys all within that blast. And they weren't all bunched together because this thing has quite the range. It's like, I don't know, 7 or 8 inches, maybe not that long. I can't remember, but he got the reach on me, and he ended up taking out, he cooked one of my, it wasn't a flame though, it was a mental blast, but he killed off one of my characters really bad. And all I could do was laugh because, I mean, I'd never had that power used against me before, so I'm going to be watching. I don't know if Grant's got that power, but there's times when you want to group your warband together, and there's times when you do not. And boy, let me tell you, that was a bad choice on my part. All right, so what I've done now is I've applied a blue wash to all the light and dark blue, and it's given it this real worn. Sorry for the lack of autofocus here, but it's given it this beat up look, which I really like. But what I'm going to do now is I'm going to hit the silver or the metallics with a dark wash. I want them dulled down a bit. I don't want the silver as bright as it currently is. And oh boy, did I block this up? Come on. Oh, I need a paper clip to break that open. I don't have one. I may have to use a different wash. You know what? I'm going to use purple. I'm going to try it. Sometimes you just want to try something. Purple on metallic. Let's see what it looks like. A purple wash on his metal parts. You never know. All right, let's try it. Put it on his knuckles and all his fist. Actually, I kind of think I'm going to like that. It's definitely got a metallic-y, purple-y look to it. Oh, yeah. It may not show up in the pictures, but I'll shoot some photos of this, and I'll pin them to the end of the video so you can see the final effect of that purple wash on the silver. The main thing is I'm just trying to take some of the sheen off of that silver. It's a bit bright, and the washes can help do that. By the way, these miniatures I'm buying, there's another game I've started playing called 5 Parsecs from Home. Some of you have probably heard plenty of talk about it. It is a solo sci-fi miniature game that has a skirmish type battle component to it, but it also has between combat component where you're on a ship, you're a crew, and you roll for random things that happen as you're moving from planet to planet. When you land, you can do actions such as recruit or find jobs and stuff like that. And it's really quite an interesting game. I got into it right before our move into the new house, and I haven't been able to get back to it, but I plan on doing that very shortly. And one of the things I wanted to do was to film or video my activities in that game, and I still plan on doing that. So I mentioned that game because the miniatures you buy for Stargrave, or vice versa, or for 5 parsecs from home, can equally be used. I mean, you can use them in both games. So if you really, really like sci-fi and you've been looking for a fun game to play, you're not going to go wrong with either Stargrave or 5 parsecs from home. But then the good news is your investment that you put into miniatures, not just buying them, but painting them, getting them ready for the game, you will be able to play both games if you want to with the same miniatures, which is, that's kind of cool. A lot of times you buy a game and the miniatures are sort of for one particular game. Now, I'm not picking on this game. I'm just going to mention it as an example. There's a really cool game out there that I've never played called Malifaux. And they do play it at the game store, one of the game stores in Atlanta that I go to. I don't see it so often these days, but when I first started going to this game store, I saw it quite often. And it's sort of a Western, supernatural, with some fantasy elements in it. And the miniatures are just really incredible. They're just amazing. But they also are very, very specific to that game because I don't know how to explain it. Well, I can't explain it. Some of the soldier types, and I may be using the wrong words here, that you use in that game are represented in official miniatures that you buy. Now, I don't know. Somebody can chime in here on the comments. I do not know if in Malifaux you can use just any old miniatures that you want because, as I understand it, the miniatures in that game have stat cards that come with them or some in-game element that you use the miniatures and they're specific to the game. Again, I may be wording that wrong, but somebody can correct me. But that's a game that I use as an example, that the miniatures are incredible, but they have a look and feel to them that seems to fit that particular game. I'm not saying you couldn't use Malifaux miniatures in a fantasy RPG or even a sci-fi one, but they just don't have that. They don't have that look, and I think that's because they were designed. Their sculpting and the way they look is designed for that specific game. And again, that's a very niche game too, because it's supernatural, Western, cowboy, maybe some elements of steampunk in there. I haven't played the game, so I could be wrong, and I may be totally just hosing it up, the explanation. But I mention this only because I think that it's cool when you can buy one miniature like this one and use it in multiple games. All right, so this guy is almost done. The purple was a good choice. I really like it on the metal. It tones that silver down. What I'm going to do now is I'm going to paint some of the details, like his eye, and there's some buttons and things on his armor that I think deserve to have some color. Now, when it comes to that, I usually go very bright because I figure this thing's going to be toned down a little bit with some of the washes and stuff that I've already put on it. And so the bright colors over the wash will bring something back. So what I'm going to do here is I'm going to use yellow for his eye, or I guess his face right there, the dot. And what I do is I just put a little bit on there, and I'm going to let it dry, and then I'll do it again and again and again until it gets to the brightness that I want. I don't want to have to repaint this, so I'm usually a little stingy with the paint at first. And the other thing I try to do on things like that is I try to make a bulb. I try to make an actual, like a little raindrop of paint. Now, when it dries, it'll go down a little bit, but I'll keep building it up until it stands out really well. Now, right now it stands out really well, but that's because it's wet. As soon as it dries, I fully expect it to go down just a little bit. And once you're happy with it, stop messing with it, like what I'm doing here. Now, on the back, he's got some bits and bobs that I'm going to do. I'm going to do those with red because, again, red's a... you know what? I'll do orange. Let's find an orange. Come on. You got to have an orange in here. Close enough. I like bright colors on dark minis because they add that little bit of extra detail that just can make a miniature stand out when it's on the table a few feet in front of you. And this guy has a little power pack on his back that is rectangular, and so I'm going to hit it with red. And again, I'm going to build it up a little bit. If you can see that right in his back, right there. He's also got one on his front, so I'm going to paint that one red as well. And again, these metal minis are just... My hand sometimes shakes when I'm holding miniatures. For some reason, these light miniatures, these metal miniatures are just very... The heaviness actually, I think, helps a little bit. All right, now I want to do little silver dots on the rivets. He's got various, I don't know how to describe them, I'm gonna call them rivets. He's got little circles that are like where the joints come together, like a pin holds the arm and the leg together. And what I'm gonna do is I'm just gonna hit those with the tiniest of silver dots just to make it sort of remind you that he is a robot. He has metal parts. And now the one thing I'm not going to do today, because I just don't think I have time, is I'm not going to work on the base. The base is going to bug me because it's just black. But I do try to add elements to a base that give it some detail. And I haven't quite figured out what I'm going to do with this guy yet, or with all of my sci-fi miniatures. I probably will give them the same style, base, same detail type, same color scheme, but so far I haven't got that worked out yet. Sorry, I stop talking when I'm holding my breath. When I'm trying to do very, very detailed dots, I tend to hold my breath. I like that. Like that. All right, are there any I missed? I got the ones on the side, got the ones on the front. Oh, the inside ones. Yep, I knew I was going to forget something. I always forget something. I don't know if any of you guys do. When I paint a mini, I'll look at it and go, it's done. And then an hour later, when I'm really looking at it, I go, oh, look, I totally missed his armpit, or I totally missed that little detail on his chest. So I'm trying to get better at just not wrapping up and saying, okay, all done. Try to actually look it over, see what I can find. And then, inevitably, like what I'm going to do here is I find some sort of detail that I'm like, you know what, that would look really good silver. He has these kneecaps pads that I just think would look really cool as silver. So that's what I'm doing. I'm painting over the blue. If you can see the knee pad up front there. I also have noticed, and this is just me, that lately when I paint a mini, I'm spending a little more time with it, doing a little bit extra. I fix mistakes more often lately, I find. And I don't know, nothing's changed. I think I'm starting to enjoy the painting process a little bit more. And so I'm more careful about the things I'm doing. He's got some... missed something there. No, I didn't. Talking to myself again. All right. He has these, I don't know what you'd call them. They're like little shoulder pad pieces, but you know what? I'm not going to mess with those. Those look like they'd be really hard to get into. And, of course, I missed one little bit of silver here. So, again, what I'm going to do is I'm going to let this paint dry, and then I'm going to take some close-up photos, and I'll post them at the end of this video. Now, this video is going to be, because it's much, much longer, I'm going to make this one Patreon only. I have a Patreon. I'm gonna do speed up of the thing and then show the final one, so somebody can watch a 2-minute video of me like fast painting this thing. They won't hear the discussion, but they'll be able to see the end result. And then if they want to see the full 1 hour of me going blah, 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 they can come check that out over on the Patreon, which is probably what you're doing. If you're hearing my voice right now, it means you are a patron of mine, and I do appreciate it. All right, I think this guy is done. I'm calling him done. Yeah, I'm happy with him. Again, I'm not a professional miniature painter. Never have pretended to be. Let's see if I can show you him. There you go. There we go. So let's wrap him around. Again, I'm not a professional painter. I just do what I like, as long as it looks realistic on the table. Painted, not realistic. If I can get it painted and on the table, I am a happy player. So there you go. One robot done. All right. Thank you for putting up with my rambling for an hour or however long this goes. If you like this, please let me know in the comments. If you don't, let me know in the comments, and I'll stop doing them probably if enough people gripe. I just thought it would be fun when I paint a miniature to record it and pick a topic. So not every topic is going to be Stargrave, not every topic is going to be sci-fi, not every topic is going to necessarily be war game related. Some of them might be RPG. I've got a lot of things I play and a lot of hobbies, or a lot of things I like to do with my hobby. So what I'll do in the next video, I'll paint another mini, and I'll pick a topic and chat about it. If you want to hear my thoughts and opinions on a particular topic, feel free to drop it in a comment and tell me, and I'll see what I can do. All right, there we go. This is Jim, the Tabletop Engineer. Thanks for joining me as I got one of my minis painted. I definitely find this inspirational as I'm talking to you and recording it. It makes the time go by a little quicker. So I hope you liked it as well. I'll take some close-up photos, included at the end of the video for you, okay? Everybody, take care.